Welcome back to Tools, Talents, and Techniques. We're here with Ty Smith. We're here for round two of our discussion. To catch him up on everything, is that we went through Ty's background, his early aspirations, joining the Navy, his path to SEAL training, his experience in SEAL training. We also talked a lot about the channeling of your determination and your grit. We talked about acceptance and balance. I'm not even sure where we left off. I was in the zone talking talking with you, Ty. So um, thank you for joining us again. Thank you for sharing your experience. I really appreciate it. How are you, Ty?
I'm great. Thank you for having me. I was looking forward to coming back.
We are talking about your experience in the sale, but I don't want to limit you to that. Let's just pick up. So wherever you want to share in the Navy SEALs, how your experience was there and the things that you've learned. Let's just go.
Yeah, sure. So my time in the SEAL teams was amazing, Dustin. I mean, it was everything that I had dreamed I would experience, growing up as a kid and dreaming about what it would be like to be in the SEAL teams and being in the Navy as a young adult prior to getting into training and dreaming, like literally dreaming at night, because I was so just completely focused on that goal. It was everything that I thought about all day and all night. And so, yeah, I would actually dream about being a Navy SEAL several nights a week. And so when I actually got into the SEAL teams, it's no surprise, after we talked about me being in an airplane flying to New York City on 9/11, that the timing worked out where, I got exactly what I was asking for. And so I ended up spending the rest of my career as an active duty operator, approximately 15-ish years in naval special warfare community, 6 tours to Iraq, Afghanistan, the United Arab Emirates, plenty of combat experience at the highest levels of military special operations. It was just dreaming the entire time. I was literally living my dream and doing exactly what I wanted to be doing with my life. I served alongside, some of the most incredibly talented and wicked smart people I've ever met in my life. People that just look at problems in a completely different way. That you can't help but learn from those people just by being within their presence. And there's something to be said about working with with men of that caliber. And I'm not saying, men just like I'm excluding women. I always want to be careful to say that, because we live in a day and age where people will just pick on you and tell you what you meant, even though that's not what you meant. But during my career in the SEAL teams, all of the operators were male. And so that's why I'm saying that. But there's something to be said around, well, and I think that there's something to that too, because, like us men, we're pumping testosterone and all of this is energy, right? And we can feel one another's energy and we react to it. And so for me, there was something to be said about being within that type of environment, and especially for so long, because you know what they say, sharpens iron. And so when you're in that type of community where if you're a second slower than you're supposed to be, if you went right when you should have went left even one time, everyone is going to know it. And so everything, and they're going to make a big deal out of it, like a really big deal out of it. And so iron sharpens iron. And when you are within that type of community for that long, it rubs off on you in a bunch of different ways. But you asked me what I learned from all of that time. I think that, well, first and foremost, I learned a tremendous amount, but I don't want to talk for an hour and a half straight without taking a breath. So I would say that the most important thing that I learned from my entire 2 decade career in the military, Dustin, and this is, again, this is from all of it, whether it be my time in the SEAL teams, my time as a military police officer. I think that what I really learned is that people are people. We're all the same and we're all different at the same time. And I say that because what I'm really trying to say is like we are all connected. And sometimes people look at me sideways when I say that, and I go like, no, you're just gonna have to trust me on this one. I've seen things that shouldn't have been. I've experienced things that should not have been. I've lived through situations I should not have lived through. I've seen my friends survive situations they should not have, and I know beyond the shadow of a doubt that it has nothing to do with with me as an individual. Again, me being this hyper badass or extremely talented or fast or wicked smart person has nothing to do with any of that, right? But we are all connected nonetheless, and we all really want the same thing, even for our differences. And that's why I said it that way. Like we're all the same and we're all different. We're all the same in that I don't know what you believe in, but I believe that there is one creator, and that one creator created all of us. And there's a method to all of this. We just don't understand it. We're maybe not meant to understand it yet, and maybe we will someday. But we're all also the same in that across all these cultures of people that I have met, that I've interacted with, that I've kind of grown with over the years, even for our differences. And it's the big differences that we make a big deal out of, religion, sexual orientation. Um, we look at someone based on how they look and judge them. It's all of these things that we can actually, turn into some type of gimmick or some type of um, reality show. Like that's the stuff that we focus on instead of focusing on the fact that, hey, the really, how can I say this? The things that really make up the fabric of who we are as people and how we should carry ourselves on this planet, it's the same across all the cultures. We all want the same thing. We want our families to be safe and healthy, and we want them to flourish. We want them to be treated fairly. For the most part, we want people to be treated fairly. For the most part, people don't like seeing other people, you know, stomped down or beat down, whether it be by a bully or by the man. For the most part, we all think that we should all mind our own business, right? Like for the most part, people are kind of just like, no, I don't really care about what they're doing over there. I care about my family and my tribe and making sure that they are okay. No, it doesn't mean that I'm going to turn a blind eye to something bad that's happening over there because I'm not really allowed to do that either. But make no mistake, my priority is within my tribe. And again, that is across all of these different cultures that I've interacted with. So for us to all be the same and different at the same time. For me, it's one of those things where it kind of makes me feel really, really small because I kind of zoom out and it makes me go, wow, what does that really, really mean? What have we been doing all of these years? How are we all really connected to one another? Like once we finally get it, once that light bulb finally goes off, will we look back on things and go, oh my gosh, what have we done? What have we done to one another? What have we been doing to ourselves all this time? Because we're all connected. And it took me a very long time to realize that, a very long time to realize that. And honestly, it wasn't really until after I retired from the military that I always had a feeling about it, but I truly began to realize and accept it, especially once I was able to remove myself from the ego of a Navy SEAL. You know what I mean? And kind of come over here and start looking back and analyzing the different parts of my life and the different things that I experienced is when I really started to kind of put this piece together with this piece over here and this piece together with this piece over here. And it just kind of hit me like, we're all connected. Like, why,
Well,
why are we pushing against one another?
well,
This really doesn't make any sense anymore.
yeah, I'm really interested into that, like when that light bulb clicks. And do you recall you mentioned that you were reflecting on these things? Do you remember when it really started to set in? Were you doing something else? Were you like working on something else? Were you, I don't know, going for a run? Like what's walk me through the setting of when you started to really put all this together and see have that light bulb go off?
Well, I don't think that it was like one particular instance. I think it was more of like a period of time in my life. And it was within like that first three, 2.5, 3 years of me retiring from the SEAL teams where I was really in this looking backwards analytical mode because I was trying to figure out how do I survive PTSD?
Mm.
I don't want this to kill me someday. So I need to figure this out. And it's kind of like what Dr. Viktor Frankl, said. He wrote a fantastic book called A Man's Search for Meaning. I don't know if you've read that one, but
Mhm.
he said something along the lines of how tragic would an unexamined life be? For you to have lived through all these experiences, whether good or bad, but you haven't bothered to look back at them, especially the ones that were bad or traumatic, to go, hey, what was I supposed to learn from that? How was I supposed to grow? No matter how bad that may have seemed, there was something I was supposed to learn from that that's preparing me for something that's possibly in front of me, right? And so I was really kind of delving into, hey, I don't want to become a statistic one day. I don't want to take my own life someday. And that frightens me. I think that I now have the capacity for that given my combat experiences. And so it was within that first 2 to 3 years after I retired from the SEAL teams that I was really just trying to figure out how to survive because I knew that I had, traumatic brain injury. I knew that I had post traumatic stress and it had changed me as a human being forever. And I was concerned. And so again, when I was, and I was just kind of naturally in this state where in my head at different times I was dwelling on some of the experiences, that I had survived growing up in East St. Louis, some of the things I've survived, during the time that I was in the SEAL teams. And the one thing that kind of stood out to me that didn't it wasn't quite registering to me. It wasn't making any sense, which is how I knew I was onto something because I was also this was during a time where I was really questioning my faith in God, like really questioning my faith in God. As a result of, like, again, I'd seen a lot of stuff. I had gone through a lot of things. I've seen some horrible things. I lost some friends. I didn't understand a lot of what I'd seen, but I knew that I didn't like it. I didn't like the way it made me feel. And so I was kind of looking at some of the things that I'd gone through growing up, things I'd gone through in the SEAL teams. And when I was putting together some of these situations that were just kind of crazy to me, the one thing that I could pull out of them that I couldn't really explain was the fact that this was a situation that beyond a reasonable doubt, I know that I should not have gotten out of this situation. And it didn't have anything to do with me as an individual being cool or great or talented. And so what does that mean? And it just sent me down a rabbit hole of trying to figure out what does that mean? What does that mean for me? What does that mean for the people surrounding me, my family, my friends? How is this going to dictate the way that I think from this moment moving forward? And so, yeah, I'd say it was more of this period of time within the first 2 years of me retiring from the military. And again, it wasn't something that I could sit down and write a piece of paper and show you like this diagram pointing to it. No, it was just more of a sense of connectivity with the world and with people and just seeing things in a completely different perspective, having survived those experiences.
Were there any resources or tools that you used during that time period? And I guess to clarify that, was there anything that you used, whether it be therapy or resources or meditation or journaling? Were there any things that you used during that time?
Yeah, I used all of the things, right? Because again,
Whatever you could do.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, because again, I was searching. I was actively trying to save my own life. For the very first time in a very long time, I was alone. For the very first time in a long time, I didn't have a team. I didn't have a teammate to my left and to my right. I was alone and I was on my own. And in a way, it was killing me. And so I was trying to figure out how to survive. And so this was something that I had to do. And I knew that I had to do it because being idle, it wasn't going to work out well for me or for my loved ones. And so I took my healing into my own hands, and I wouldn't say no to anything. I was willing to try everything, whether it be, floating, a lot of things that I still do today, like cold water therapy, heat therapy, whether it be a sauna or steam room or hot yoga, surfing, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, acupuncture, um, gosh, you name it, I did it. I went through the 6 month traumatic brain injury clinic at Naval Medical Center Balboa, which was tremendously helpful. By the way, they really helped to kind of line me back up here before I retired. I did something called transcranial magnetic stimulation for the brain, and I was doing that once a week for several months. And that's where they place these magnets, at different on different parts of your head to kind of stimulate your natural brain waves, because the science has found that when you have traumatic brain injury, you've kind of offset the balance of things, as far as like not just the chemical imbalance in your brain, but your actual brain waves. And so uh, there was a bunch of science that was backing up transcranial magnetic stimulation as something that was helpful for men and women suffering from post-traumatic stress. And so I did that for a few months. I think that I did get uh, some help from that. Of course, I don't know how much. And so I wouldn't say that I am where I am today as a result of any one initiative. It was, hey, I'm doing all of this stuff. I'm not going to find like this miracle drug that's going to cure me of post traumatic stress and traumatic brain injury. No, this is something that I'm going to have to work on for the rest of my life. And I'm still trying new things and still doing some of the old things that I found that just work for me.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that when you try so many things, it's hard to indicate which ones have what effect because you're doing so many different things. But whatever, it's the journey too. It's the process of betterment, and now you have those experience, and I hear you like how much one impacts over the other. It's really hard to dictate that. Um, I want to ask you a question about your experience in the SEAL team, and maybe this translates into your professional career. One thing that I've heard from other people that are in active duty combat and SEAL team training and active duty is preparation and the level of preparation. Is that something that stood out in your experience and the things that you learned and like what it takes to really prepare for everything?
Yeah,
The
I
level the
love
level
that
the level the,
question.
the level of detail and the time commitment.
I love that question because it really is, to me, like it's not just the story of me actually making it through SEAL training and having a successful career in the SEAL teams, but it's also the story of entrepreneurship. It's that grit. Like you have to be just completely maniacally focused on that goal. And whether it be a college student or a would-be founder or a new founder reaches out to me and they're asking advice, and go, hey, like, what's the most important thing that you've learned as a founder? I feel like it's the same thing that I've learned is most important when it comes to anything that it is important to you that you accomplish that mission. Is that, well, if it's that important, you have to be so committed to accomplishing that mission that you're willing to die for it. You're willing to die for it. Just like Nipsey Hussle said it, like I went through every emotion on this journey to getting to where I am right now. I went through every emotion. And that's what entrepreneurship feels like. Some days you feel like you're on cloud nine. You're like, oh my God, this is awesome. It feels great. And the very next day you're like, I feel like a loser. What was I thinking? Like who did I think I was that I could actually pull this shit off? You know? And that is, again, that's an emotional roller coaster that I just wasn't prepared for coming into entrepreneurship. But again, when I look back over my career in the SEAL teams, when I go even beyond that, and I look at things that I accomplished before I joined the SEAL teams, when I look at my life now and the two businesses that I've built, again, and it's funny how it comes down to Like, hey, I can boil all this stuff down. If so, there's one commonality amongst all this stuff, right? And even when it comes to this particular piece, there was one thing that just never failed me, and that was just grit. That just pure grit. I will not stop. Like I don't care what you say, what you do. If I've decided that that is for me, don't get in my way. Like I am just not going to quit. I am the Terminator. Once I decide that that is mine, you're better off supporting me and not getting in my way. And that has to be the attitude that you take into, again, if it's important, it should be important enough for you to devote your life to it. And if it's not that important, do not waste a single second of your life sweating that if it's not that important. And if you can apply yourself to whatever your goal is that way, I think that it means a couple of things. I think first and foremost, it means that you have what it takes to accomplish that goal. But I feel like it also means that that goal is worthy of you accomplishing, because you got to think about how difficult it is for you to fully apply yourself to a mission so fanatically that you are willing to risk nearly everything, including your life, in order to accomplish that mission. Whether you're talking about a mission that you're running as an operator in the special operations community overseas, and you could lose your life because you're so committed to the team and to the mission and to the bigger picture of supporting your country that you're willing to die in order to achieve that mission. Or whether I'm over here and I'm talking about Safe AI, the company that I've built, and I've raised all this venture capital. Now there's investor dollars on the line. And by the way, I'm a real founder, so I don't have a plan B. This is all I do. So it has to work, because if it doesn't, then how do I provide for my family? And so it may not feel like lives are on the line, but make no mistake, lives are on the line. And so if it is important enough for me to devote my time to doing it, and it's so important that I'm willing to lay down my life for this, I'm in the right place. I am doing the right things with my time.
You have a very you have a good balance in the way you deliver information, right? So the way I hear you speak, like you're intense, but you're under control, right? And have you ever had to like temper back your excitement or your
Oh my gosh,
intensity
all the
in
time.
the, yeah?
All the
How
time. I mean, and I love how you just put that, because immediately what came to mind for me was that's combat. That is combat. That's SEALs in combat. It's very intense, but make no mistake, we are in control of everything.
Hmm.
It's intense, but it's under control. So for you to say that, like I couldn't even run away from it, because I was like, yeah, you maybe you just nailed me, at least in some cases.
Well, everything that you said before about you know the creator and like the balance and the whole spectrum. One of the things that I find so fascinating, and I guess on two notes, is that spectrum of experience of the really highs and the really low. Like that's what we're doing here. We're here to experience this to hopefully make a positive impact, but really to experience all of these feelings. And we try to put words on them, but it's really hard to put words on what these things are and how you feel. But there's a balance in everything, and I feel like that balance of working fast but slow and thinking big picture but also focusing on the details and uh there's a balance in everything. And sometimes I find it hard to like, how am I coming across? Because sometimes I get so excited and I'm so intense, and I don't want to, you know, like make it seem like it's haphazard, because it's not. It's well thought through. I have a lot of great resources and team around me, but I also don't want it to come across that I'm just like throwing it against the wall, because I'm not. Anyway, that's just something that I'm working through, and it's great to hear you say that. That's kind of been your experience.
Yeah, and I think about it all the time. And like some people, I'm torn, because on on one hand, I'm like, hey, do you be yourself. Don't change yourself for anyone. But on the other hand, I'm like, yeah, Ty, that's in a perfect world, but do I really want to be me around,
Like, yeah.
everybody? Like, I don't know about that. It depends on the day, because at one point, who was I? Well, me, was a trained killer. Do I want to be that guy? Even though, like, honestly, that's the person I probably identify with the most as a result of all of the trauma I've endured as a child, as a teenager, as a man. Again, there's a lot to be said about the human race and what we have propensity toward. And I don't know. It's something that I try my hardest to be in the middle on, because I do recognize that I can be intense, I can be controlling, and sometimes I need to be that. I think that what's most important, Dustin, is that we realize, and maybe this isn't true for everyone, but I have realized this about myself, especially over the last few years, and I've really learned to accept it. And especially over the last year, because I've learned to accept it, I feel like it's been tremendously helpful that I understand and I accept that if I'm asking myself, like really, who am I? Well, yeah, I'm Ty, but make no mistake, there are multiple Ties in here. There are several of them. You know how, like, so I'm a Gemini. I was born in June. June 5th is my birthday. And so, people that believe in zodiac signs, they go, "Oh, you're a Gemini. That means there are two of you. You're twins, right?" And when I was younger, I didn't really know what to make of that. But once I got older and once I deployed overseas as an active duty operator in the SEAL teams a few times, I knew exactly what that meant. I went, "Oh yeah, they're right. I do have a twin." And that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know if I want to be myself all the time around people, because my twin is pretty much the guy that, like, no, you want to leave him in Afghanistan. You want to leave my twin in Iraq. You don't want him cruising around normal people. You know what I mean? That's the break the glass in case of war guy. But as I got older and more mature, and again, I really started looking back on, God, what am I supposed to be learning through all of this stuff? That's where it really began to dawn on me that, hey, there's a bunch of people that up here, and maybe not a bunch, but I've identified at least a few. So let's be honest, there is the train killer that's up there, and that person was created, by way of a life of trauma, that was just paired with training and a will to do good, right? I know that there's a monster in there, right? Because sometimes the trained killer isn't enough. Trust me, I've been there. Sometimes it's not enough. Sometimes to defeat the monster, you have to become the monster when your life is on the line. But also, I know there's a priest up there that sometimes, even in normal life, when the twins trying to come out, instead of trying to keep that dude locked behind the door, it's like, no, yeah, I need to talk to the priest and tell the priest to go talk to that dude right now, right? But seriously, I've learned that I have these different personalities in there, and it's normal actually, because we're human beings. We all go through different moods. I'm just explaining it in a way that makes sense to me, because these are feelings and emotions that I've worked through, and not just by myself, but with my therapist, with my psychologist, with my executive coach. And these are people that I've been working with for years, and I'm still working with these people. Like, I pay them to tell me about myself and to help me make sense of all of this stuff, right? But it's been very helpful to me that I learned that, because something that I think has changed my life tremendously is the realization that not only is there that other side of me, that twin, that, like, it's not even right that I said it out loud. Like, that's the dude, like, that's the part of Ty we should leave in Iraq. That's the part of Ty we should leave in Afghanistan, because honestly, that's not true. That's a part of the problem. I think that's a part of the problem with PTSD. I think that's a part of the problem that men and women struggling with this diagnosis, I think that's the part that we fail to comprehend to the point where it hurts us. Because I've been thinking that way for years, like, oh, you got to leave that dude overseas, or how does that apply now? Well, I want to keep that dude locked behind a door. Again, break glass in case of war, but I don't ever want that guy to see the light of day in this world, and I don't want this world to see that guy. And for years I had been trying to repress that. And that's what veterans do. You know, you try to repress that by way of drinking or in some other type of substance abuse. You have men and women that get in trouble for domestic violence, all kinds of things that manifest as a result of those experiences, those traumas, and then you try to keep them locked behind the door. Because when you go through those things, you're becoming someone else, right? And so you try to keep that person locked behind the door because you're afraid of that person, or how is that person being out going to affect my family? I got to protect them even from me, you know. So maybe I leave, maybe I go and become addicted to drugs, maybe I commit suicide, but I just know I got to protect these people from me because I love them that much. And so you start thinking that way. And I think that is very harmful to the veteran. And it was tremendously impactful to me when I realized that, hey, Ty, you can, and I didn't come to this realization on my own. It was my executive coach actually that helped me come to this realization. And when he brought me to the realization, like it was one of those things where it was such a strong um, sensation, the experience of it, the realization of it was so impactful. It was almost one of those things where I like, if had I been standing up, I would have needed to sit down.
Mm.
It was that profound. And so he said to me, because he asked me, well, what do you think you're trying to do with that guy? Like if you start feeling your temper rising, or someone says something, you're feeling that reaction come out of you, that SEAL team reaction come out of you. You know, well, what are you trying to do? He's like, well, obviously, I don't want that person to be cruising around this world. Like, trust me, you don't want to see that person. And so, yeah, I try to keep him locked behind a closed door. And so he goes, okay, now take yourself and put yourself in the shoes of that part of you, right? No, first and foremost, I want you to realize that that part of you you're trying to keep locked away, that's still you. It's still you. That part of you that you're trying to keep locked away, it's still that little boy that was cruising around East St. Louis, and he was scared and he was being bullied and he was just trying to figure out what the hell was going on and why it was happening to him. That's still him, and that's still you. And now I want you to put yourself in the shoes of that side of you. And how do you think you would feel looking at yourself and going, wow, really, that's what you that's what you think of me? You want to keep me locked up behind a closed door? Like you don't want to let me in with the rest of y'all and enjoy, like, I saved your life, bro. Like,
Mm.
really? You want to lock me out? I saved your friends' lives. You think that was you? That wasn't you that did. That was me. And now that you're back here, you want to lock me away? And it when he explained it, and when I looked at it, and I was able to run with the rest of it, um, yeah, it was very profound to me. It makes me very emotional to know, to realize that, yeah, that's actually what I was doing to myself. And so that's really when I started to realize, okay, well, if I know that dude's up there, and trust me, I know that dude is up there, who else am I ignoring that is up there? You know what I mean? And so that's when I started to realize, like, there's a few people up there. There's the hopeless romantic that still believes that the world is going to be okay at all costs and we're going to make it that way. There's the trained killer. There's the priest. There's the monster. There's all these people. And I had to learn to stop fighting with all of them and accept all of them, and allow them to all accept one another, because again, they might need one another. You know, I could be in a situation where I'm observing something that feels like something nefarious is about to go down. You know, maybe it is, maybe it's not. and maybe I'm trying to get control of my ego, because there is none. Maybe that person didn't mean anything by what they just said. Maybe it is just my ego. Whereas back in the day, I would have been trying to repress my ego, like, get out of here. I don't need you here. But now it's like, oh, no, 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 no. I don't want you to leave because I might actually need you. I just want you to sit down next to the priest. No, 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 no. Don't sit down next to that tie because that tie is going to tell you to get up and eat that dude's face off. So other side of the couch, I want you to purposely sit next to the priest that's up there because he's going to talk to you as I'm still taking in information to figure out what the hell is going on before I respond to this. And I've learned to allow myself to go through those thought processes and just really kind of take it easy on myself and understand that, hey, you do have, different types of moods up there that are the result of your lifetime experiences and most of them trauma. And guess what? It is okay. It doesn't mean that that has to run your life. I think it's actually a really good thing because it gives you depth, it gives you perspective, it allows you to have empathy and sympathy and to want to be that hopeless romantic to help people. And I've just had to learn to live with it. But it was again, it was just something that when I realized it, it was center of my heart, and it's been
one
there.
one of the things that jumps out to everything that you're expressing is awareness and reflection. Because I know in my own practice with meditation, one of the things that has really been beneficial is becoming more aware of what those feelings are when they come up, whatever it be, your anger or, you know, scared or even elated. Like, what are those feelings? And if you sit with yourself long enough and you know the base you, like you sit in one spot and just breathe for long enough, you start to realize like, oh, this thought's coming up, this feeling's coming up, and then you stop, don't respond, don't do anything, but just be aware of it. And then like, well, what is that? Where am I feeling that? Is my back tensing up? Like, what am I? And actually exploring those feelings, those emotions, those thoughts, and hearing what you're saying, it's like sometimes like, what is that? Oh, trained killer tie is coming up. What does that feel like? How am I showing up in that? And one of the biggest, I guess, real life benefits of that is that I can stop, right? I don't have to react. I can, when I feel like that coming up, it's like, okay, that's a signal. Don't do
Yep.
anything. Just breathe or do whatever it is and just be aware that that's not the optimal you in that situation that's going to be responding to that. So just,
Right. And I've
and
learned to
one way
take
I,
it a
I,
step
I've tried to
further.
explain it to people is like your flags go up, right? Like you get
Right.
something aroused, I guess, for lack of a better word, and your flags go up. All right, if you're going around your day to day with your flags up, then the wind is going to carry you whatever way it's going to blow. But you know what? Oh, my flags are up. I realize it. Let's just tuck them in, tuck the flags in, figure out like what it is, and make a rational decision instead of just responding, just instead of reacting. So you can respond instead of react. And you know what? I think that actually ties back into preparation and training. It's all the same thing, but one thing I think I would imagine that in SEAL training is like, no, you have to react. Like there are situations where you have to react and you have to trust yourself and you have to trust your team based on the situation and how you have to react or respond.
Absolutely. And I've learned to take that conversation a step further and go, not only do I need to be mindful of these feelings, but I need to start asking myself, what's the why behind those feelings? Why did I feel that way? Why
Mm.
did I react to what that person said the way that I reacted to it? Or even better, like you're saying, if I can prevent myself from reacting at all, can I still have the conversation in my mind of, hey, why were you about to react that way? Whatever they just said, why did it make you feel the way it made you feel? Especially if you're wrong and they didn't mean it that way, why did you perceive it that way? And so I've spent a lot of time over the last couple of years just working on my own ego and trying to understand the why behind those feelings. Because I don't want to be blaming this person for something I experienced with this person and possibly 18 years ago, right? And now this person is trying to figure out what the hell is happening to them. Like, why is this person interacting with me this way? And they have no idea what's happening in my head.
Yeah.
And if I don't even know what's happening, how are they going to know what's going on? It was kind of like, when I was on LinkedIn last week, and I shared a story about, long story short, I broke up this fight. It was about to be a fight between these two gentlemen. Fortunately, it didn't fight because I intervened and kind of talked them down, and one guy just turned and walked away. But that was what it's kind of like, where the person just gives up, and they're like, what am I doing here? Like, why was I just about to? I don't even know why I was about to fight this person. You go this way, you know. But I've learned to go like, hey man, why are you responding? Why are you feeling that? Why do you feel the hair on the back of your neck raising up as a result of hearing that person say that? Because I just want to have a deeper understanding of my own thought process,
Yeah.
and am I using the right thought process to make the decisions that I'm making? And then the other part of that is sometimes you need that tactical pause, Dustin. Sometimes the right reaction is no reaction. And I've learned that too. Sometimes the right reaction is to pause for just another heartbeat or two, to let the situation develop just a little bit more before you decide whether you need to go left or go right. But in order for you to make those kind of decisions, like you got to be taking in information from all over the place.
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about here. That's what we're doing. Just trying to get smart from a bunch of different perspectives.
Yeah. I think creating that space and going from a reaction to a mindful response,
Yes.
even if it's a heartbeat or two, it can mean everything. It can mean absolutely everything.
Yeah.
I want to pivot for a minute here, but not really a pivot. But I want to ask you a question, and then we could talk about your entrepreneurial journey. Do you feel that entrepreneurship is harder than being a Navy SEAL?
Yes.
Really? That's kind of like a loaded
Absolutely.
question. I didn't think that you'd say yes, but I kind of felt like you might. Would love to hear your perspective on that.
Well, I mean, think about it. By the time I deployed as an active duty SEAL for the very first time, think about how much training and preparation the Navy put into me before they actually allowed me to go overseas and do the job. So even ahead of my first deployment, even though like I was scared shitless just as much as the next human being, whether you're an operator or not, you're getting ready to go into to do some serious work, right? That could cost you your life. Um, but at the same time, I was supremely confident because the amount of training that I had endured. Right? And we go through that much training for a reason because you don't want to have to rely on thinking all the time. Like sometimes you have to be able to fall back on training because it's like what Mike Tyson said: everybody's got a plan, and you get punched in the face, and then
Yeah.
that plan goes out the window, right? And now it's just pick up basketball. Well, that's where all that training comes into play because my buddy went right, I know to go left. I ain't even got to think about it, right? And so entrepreneurship, like, no, I didn't have that kind of preparation coming into this. Like, sure, I went to business school, and I had a couple of mentors that could talk to me, but I didn't get put through the rigors of of entrepreneurship before being allowed to to start my first company. Like I was just allowed to go out there and start a business, whether I was ready to or not. But I think that's a difference maker. I'll never forget when I first checked into SEAL Team 8 after completing all of my training, advanced training. I checked into SEAL Team 8, and I didn't feel like I was actually someone special until I walked into the locker room, the operator's locker room at Field Team 8 for the very first time. Because as you're walking in, you look above the doors, and there was this long plaque, and it's probably still there, but it quotes, I believe it was General Thucydides that said this, a Spartan general, but it said something along the lines of, we have to remember that every man is the same as the next man. Like we're all just people. But he is best who is trained in the severest school. And when I read that it just again it let me know, okay, like you're here for a reason, and you did navigate the severest school on the planet in order to get here. And so even deploying overseas for the very first time, like sure you're scared, especially because bullets are getting ready to start flying, but at the same time I was confident. I had a bunch of training. I was a badass frogman. I was with my teammates. I'm alone now on top of this hill as the CEO of this venture-backed technology company. I don't have the structure that I had when I was in the military. Like I don't have, my men to my left and my men to my right that I know are going to be there hands down every time, no matter how dire the situation becomes. I can't just call for close air support. If cash flow isn't right and we're not going to make payroll, you know what I mean? Like how
Yeah.
kind of am I? You know what I mean? So, yeah, it's just a different level of stress. Even when I consider toward the end of my career, and I was a platoon chief at SEAL Team One, and I took my boys back to Afghanistan for what was the craziest deployment of my entire 20-year career. I mean, we got into more than 40, 50 gunfights in 4.5 months. In 4.5 months, and I mean like really bad gunfights, like not the kind that last a couple of minutes, like no, like the kind that lasts a day. Like
Wow.
18 hours of fighting for your life. And when I think about it, like we dominated because of all of the training we had to fall back on. But think about me as an individual. By that time, I was a platoon chief. I was on my sixth deployment. I had been shot at a bunch of times already. I'd been in some really nasty gunfights already. I'd already had experience working with tier one units as an augment. Like I had a bunch of experience. So it was like, oh, they're shooting at us again. Surprise, surprise. You guys flank that way. We're going to lay down covering fire. You guys light them up with rockets. We're going to win. Surprise, surprise. So I've been shot at for the 100th time. It's no big deal. Whereas I jumped into entrepreneurship and I was like, oh, I don't recognize none of y'all.
Like,
All of this is brand new. I don't really know whether I should go left or go right. No, I'm willing to make a decision, but I'm just simply telling you ahead of time. I don't know how this is going to turn out. Right. And so, yeah, it's just a different kind of stress.
man, that's wild to hear you explain it in those terms. So let's talk about how you decided. Like, I know there was a couple different ventures that you started. When you tell me about your start into the technology space, what was your first leap into the business world?
Well, as I was retiring from the SEAL teams, I was also finishing my MBV, Master of Business for Veterans program. It's a veteran MBA program at the University of Southern California. So I was going to Marshall Business School. And my plan was to go over to the FBI, and I ended up turning that role down because it was December 2015, just ahead of the holiday break, when the Inland Regional Center in San Bernardino, California, was shot up by a radicalized Islamic couple. And a couple of weeks after that happened, I started getting phone calls from friends in the medical community, people that knew my wife, people that I knew, and they knew what I did for a living. They were all basically saying the same thing. We're scared. This place isn't providing us with any training. There are no policies in place to help keep us safe. Will you come and talk to us about this active shooter thing? Like, this is pretty scary. And so after doing that a few times is when I came up with the idea for Vigilance Risk Solutions, which was the predecessor to CommSafe AI. And VRS started out as really a training company, but it was about a year and some change into it where we were doing pretty good. We were generating revenue and we were working with some pretty big logos, but I was looking out across the market and noticing that all of my competitors, like we all kind of looked alike. And I had noticed that none of them had really tech enabled their businesses. They were just services businesses or consultancies. And I really wanted to work with the bigger companies, the Disneys and the Cloroxes out there. And so, we started looking at things like, well, we we're act like we're master training specialists. We understand how to build and write curriculum. So why don't we start creating our own web-based training courses? No one understands this stuff better than we do. We've lived it. This is all we do
Mm.
is combat violence and try to protect people. We should be the ones teaching them this stuff. And so we ended up building the web-based training arm of the business, and it did what we wanted it to do. It allowed us to go out and start earning those big marquee logos, like some of the ones that I've named already. And then we ended up partnering with Zendesk, and we built a proprietary case management platform that our customers could use, because we also noticed that whenever we would help a customer to respond to some type of crises, whether it had been, someone was threatening to show up to that campus with a gun, or this person is saying that they've been sexually harassed, and we're trying to help triage that. When it came down to it, like these were issues that, like, hey, we could have put controls in place in order to prevent these things from happening, but now that we know that they're happening, we have to document this stuff, because we were noticing that big companies would go, okay, well, we'll just move that person from this department to this department. And by the way, we're not going to tell the new manager while we're moving this person from that department to this department that they're actually inheriting a problem. And now that person's going to misbehave over here, and then they're going to get sent over here, and they're going to misbehave. And then ultimately, the enterprise is going to terminate that person, but none of that stuff's going to be documented. So now that person's going to file a wrongful termination lawsuit, and they're going to win because none of this stuff was documented. And so we help them to start documenting and tracking all of this data whenever we help them to triage these situations. And again, that became the differentiator that helped us to start gaining, some really rapid traction in the market. And we ended up partnering with some of the largest insurance brokerages in the world, and that became our channel and made us very successful within that business model. But when COVID started rearing its ugly head, I knew that that was going to come to a screeching halt. And it was January of 2020. Fortunately, we were coming off of 900% revenue growth in 2019. And
Wow.
so, we had money to burn, which is what we were about to do along with everyone else. And so, we sat down as a team, because at that time it was all former ninjas, former SEALs, Green Berets. I had a couple of Secret Service agents on the staff, FBI agents in San Diego, former San Diego SWAT cops. Like, we had a pretty stacked team of some really smart men and women that understood violence better than anyone in the world, and especially the mitigation of violence. And so we sat down and we had a brainstorming session. At the end of this 3-4 hour conversation, we felt strongly about a couple of things. First and foremost, all of these instances that we're helping companies to triage, they're just responding to bad things that already happened. We want to prevent the bad things from happening. If we can stop that woman from ever being harassed, like that's who we are. We don't want them to have to go through that. And then we also noticed that all of these instances started with some form of communication that was, let's just say, not safe for the work environment, to say the least. And
Mm.
so we felt strongly that if we could capture that communication early enough, then maybe we can prevent these really catastrophic incidents from happening, the kind that cost the companies time, money, talent, the kind that gets them put on the front of the Wall Street Journal and for all of the wrong reasons. Maybe we can stop the woman that is being harassed from ever being assaulted, because now a voice spoke for her, even if she couldn't speak for herself. Maybe that person that's being bullied, we can capture that communication early enough to prevent that person from coming to work with a gun to defend himself or herself. And that's how we came up with the idea for ComSafe AI. And so we built this company starting in January of 2020, and VRS became ComSafe AI. And, long story short, the board liked the idea. We were able to take on more investor capital. We had venture capital come in. Of course, I had to validate the idea before all of that took place. And I did that by way of, nearly 100 interviews with CHROs and general counsels of large enterprises that I personally did and documented, and had to provide that data to investors so that they knew that I wasn't being full of shit. But that's how VRS became ComSafe AI, and that was January 2020, and we have been working on keeping this airplane in the air since we took off at the
Yeah.
beginning of the pandemic.
So walk me through a little bit because it makes sense, and especially I love when we talk about prevention being more the intent than the cure. Is how do you go about capturing this information? Like, walk me through a situation where you're cataloging these instances. Like, where is that data captured?
Yeah, so if we're talking about ComSafe AI and the way our technology works, so ComSafe AI is a true blue artificial intelligence platform. And it implements on top of the email channels and the chat channels that the enterprise uses. It implements via an API connection. So the implementation of the tech is super fast, less than 15 minutes. It doesn't matter how big the company is or how many employees they have, or how much data has to run through our pipes. Really fast hookup. They authorize us to have access to it via that API by exchanging the tenant ID, and they turn it on and they can go back to work. The tech starts immediately ingesting and scoring all of that text-based communication data from Google Suite email, Outlook email, Microsoft Teams, Slack, and it's scoring it 24/7, and it's measuring communication sentiment and tone. It's also combining those semantics with the search for certain words and phrases that could indicate risk, and it's combining all of that information because again it's real AI, and we have a generative aspect that's built into our platform as well. And so when that exchange of information between people is happening, the technology is smart enough to understand when the sentiment in that conversation is declining toward an indication of risk, whether it be sexual harassment, racial discrimination, bullying, whether it be the person is really talking about self-harm. The person said something along the lines of, I'm tired of feeling this way. Sometimes I wish I could walk to the bottom of the ocean and never come back up. Our tech's going to catch that within milliseconds of them pressing send on that type of email or that type of Slack message to a friend, because maybe they didn't feel comfortable talking to somebody in HR about that. And it will send a real time alert to the cell phone of the stakeholders responsible for those people. So no more waiting and finding out after the fact that, like, hey, the person was crying out for help. It's like, no, we built technology that's going to tell you, hey, wake up. This human being needs help and they need help right now.
Mhm.
And so far, we found some decent success. We've got 3 products that are in the market. One that will let stakeholders know in real time of those human resources type insider threats like discrimination, bullying, harassment, threats of self-harm and harm to others. We have a product that lets the stakeholders know in real time if there's a risk to employee productivity, well-being, and engagement. And now our third and newest product in the market that's actually gaining a lot of traction is MTOR. And this product will let the stakeholders know in real time if there is a risk to their revenue. So if the customer is about to churn, and even worse, they're going to sue you as they kill the contract. And I think that particular product is extremely timely. It's extremely important right now, considering our outlook on the next 12 to 18 months in the United States of America, not just globally, but for me, especially in the United States of America. When I take a look at geopolitics, when I take a look, I think risk is about to go through the roof in the United States of America over the next couple of quarters. And so I think that we've built a product that is going to allow some of these very big middle market companies and large enterprises to survive the storm. Because I do think that a financial storm is coming to the country, and it's I think it's right at our doorstep, unfortunately.
How do you balance, or how do you think through the balance of the importance of privacy? I mean, I know this is a lot of like I don't want to talk about like future crime or like Minority Report or anything like that, but for flagging somebody for like, hey, like I'm not me, this hypothetical, but somebody in an organization, somebody in an organization is like, well, my tone of my emails tell you that I'm going to be cause you an issue, so that's why I'm being reported here. Like, how does that? Is that something that you think through, or that you ever get that you ever speak about or get pushback on?
For sure. And so first and foremost, I have to readdress the fact that this is real AI. So it's not just going to look at certain words or phrases in an email and go, oh, this person is up to something nefarious. It's not just going to go, oh, their tone was a little off. Maybe they're going to
Mm,
become a shooter. Like, no, it doesn't work that way. It is combining a tremendous amount of information. It's looking at the tone, but it's also going, hey, does this tone match what's being said? The actual words that are being exchanged, and how do they fit in? And if it looks at it, and the technology knows the difference between someone typing something that includes the phrase chicken breast versus someone typing the phrase breast in a nefarious way. It understands the difference. And if it looks at one email message and it isn't sure, instead of just sending out an alert that would be a false positive, it's intelligent enough to understand that, hey, I need to look at the last 3 to 5 interactions between those two people and gather context and nuance. That's how smart this technology is
mm,
before it sends out that alert. And I'm really proud to announce that we built this technology in such a fantastic way that it's currently beyond 90% accurate.
that's amazing, man. We're living in the future right now. That's amazing.
Yeah, we are. We are living in the future right now. And here's the thing. Back in January 2020, when I was first starting product discovery around this platform, oh yeah, like a tremendous amount of questions. And in some cases, just like onslaughts, like assaults over privacy. Like, wait, you want to do what? Like, no, it was insane. But I'm glad that we were faced with all that pressure, because again, this AI stuff was coming whether y'all liked it or not. Okay, at least we're doing the work to figure out how to do this without bias and do it correctly, and that was
Mhm.
really really important to us. That's why we interviewed so many people before we even went back to investors and said, hey, there's legs to this, we can do this, and this is going to be needed. Now again, I didn't know just how amazing our timing would be. That was God's grace. That wasn't me or us, but we knew that there was going to be something to it because we did the hard work of talking to all of our current customers at the time, because again, we were already selling to really big companies and going out to talk to new ones in order to figure it out. And what's important about that is that when you fast forward 4 years later to now, do we still get questions about privacy? Sure, from time to time. Like we have literally experienced the sea change over the last 4 years of the adoption of AI, to the point where, and I don't know the reason, Dustin. I don't know if it's because, if the enterprise sees us sitting across from them, like they just know that we know it's table stakes, that privacy is a big deal. And therefore, we've built this tech in a way that you can trust us. Ensure our platform is SOC 2 compliant. It's ISO 27701 and ISO 27001 compliant. So there's DoD grade security around this architecture. I don't know if it's that, or I don't know if they're just simply in an acceptance phase of,
Yeah.
hey, this AI thing is real and it's here to stay. And so we're just going to have to learn how to navigate it and stop trying to fight it and push it away. But we certainly get questioned a lot less, like a lot less now, at least 90% less now than we did even 2, 3 years ago when it comes to privacy.
You mentioned some of the big companies that you work with, and some of the larger employers or enterprises. Is there, and you also mentioned that insurance
Some of the
companies like what?
companies, and I just want to say, I've mentioned some of the companies I've worked with in the past.
Okay,
I have
okay.
purposely not mention any company that ComSafe AI is currently contracting with, because it is because hey, listen, there is still a very important element of privacy to what our technology is doing, because in some cases, the technology is finding an enterprise's dirty laundry. And
Yeah,
the enterprise is right to want to find it because they want to help people and they want to protect their business. And
it's
it's right for them to
liability,
want to protect their
liability,
business. It's
right? Like limiting
liability,
liability.
right? Exactly. But that doesn't mean that they necessarily want that dirty laundry being aired in the public.
Well, I mean, I'm just going through the thought process because you mentioned insurance companies and working with them. Are there any other verticals or strategic partners that would use this? So not just the larger S&P 500 or whatever, but are there other like law firms or you mentioned insurance companies or anybody else that school systems like where is this most widely and acutely applied?
Yeah, that's a great question. Great question. So, what's great about this technology is that we didn't just build a product; we built an amazing architecture
Mm,
that will allow us to attack a myriad of different use cases with this architecture. It's a matter of, do we have the proper training data in order to train the machine to deliver the outputs that we need? Okay, well then yeah, we can build that feature into this platform. No, we don't have to build another architecture in order to do it, another platform. It can just be added to this one. That's how scalable and efficient and flexible this platform is. That's how good of a job our engineering and data science team did building it. And so I think that we have an incredible business model that's going to see us penetrating all industries, because all of these problems we've talked about, they're not industry problems, they're human being problems. And so that's why we focus on the large enterprise. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. If you have more than 1,000 employees, like, you need this technology. But where we're finding honestly, where we're finding the most traction to date is actually in the legal industry.
mm.
The legal industry is very interested in this type of technology because, again, it's so there's all this liability out there, right? And that's their job. They got to go find it and they got to fix it and they got to solve these problems for their customers. So we're finding a lot of interest there, and it's pretty interesting to us too.
Yeah, that's why I mean there's so much here when I think about the applications of it and everything. I actually learned a lot more today about what you do because I had a different idea of its limitations, but now I'm like, wow, it's kind of open to everything. This because you like you mentioned the architecture, like you actually built that platform and the design. Very impressive.
Yeah, and so as we thank you, I appreciate it. So as we consider the different types of verticals or partners, again, I think that if it's a large enterprise, the tech needs to be there regardless of the vertical. But when you look at partnerships, that's why we are so interested in the legal space, because there are some tremendous partnerships there that could be just like massive force multipliers for our business. The kind of partnerships where you license them the tech and they just go sell it to everybody because they need it, right?
Hmm.
And you're doing very little work because you've already done the work up front, you've built it, and now these amazing partners are selling the technology for you. And so we're exploring a couple of those in the legal industry right now. We are also already, we're really proud to announce this, but we are already the only company in this new and rapidly growing space that is a certified technology partner of ServiceNow. We have already inked that partnership, and we're excited to see where that partnership is going to take us over the next 12 to 24 months. And that partnership in particular is really, really important, because this is also dual use technology. Some of this technology needs to go into the Department of Defense, it needs to go in state, federal, local government. A lot of people don't know that some of the use cases that we've talked about earlier, like discrimination and harassment, some of the states, are some of the biggest culprits. Some of the cities like LA County, I think a few years ago, they paid like $134 million to employees opposite sexual harassment. And this is coming from, like the city,
Mm.
not like a big enterprise within. So I think that this technology is going to eventually go into all of the public sector too. our self-harm algorithm in particular is the model that I want to get into the Department of Defense, because, for some of the reasons that we talked about earlier. And I'm tired of my friends killing themselves. And so we've built the technology that can help the Department of Defense to curb at least some of this problem. We can help put a dent in this problem. And if that means that I lose one less friend, okay, it was all worth it. But that is, I mean, that's how incredible this technology is that we've built. I think it's going to go everywhere.
Yeah. Well, Ty, we covered a lot today, and extremely impressive what you're building, what you've built, and who you are as a human being. So I thank you and congratulate you on everything, man. Keep it up.
Thank you, brother. I really, really appreciate it. I enjoy being here with you today. Um, Thank you to everybody that's listening. You can check us out at www.comsafeai. I'm also pretty public on Twitter. You can look me up on Twitter at Ty Smith 31 forward slash. And then also, I'm sorry, that's LinkedIn. And then also on Twitter, I try to be just as active on Twitter as I am on LinkedIn. And you can look me up on Twitter at Ty Smith 5326.
All right, Ty Smith. Thank you very much, sir.
All right, brother. I'll see you soon.
We'll have to do it again.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Let me know.
All right.